Matthew chapter 27, verses 51 to 56, Jesus is crucified, and this is at the end of the crucifixion process of Jesus being on the tree. He has leaned over his head, given up the spirit, expired, is what John calls it. Begins, it says, Ke idou to kata petasma tu neu eskisti is theo apo anothen eos kato. And behold, the veil of the temple was split into two, from unto the top unto the bottom. This veil was built originally at the tabernacle, or for the tabernacle. Mentions that in Exodus 26:33, where it says, And you shall put the veil upon the posts, and you shall carry in there, inside the veil, the ark of the testimony, and the veil shall separate to you between the holy and between the holy of the holies. So this veil was a separation that only the high priest could go beyond into the holy of the holies once a year. No man could go in there. It was not possible. They would not allow anybody probably even to come very close. Now later, when Solomon built the temple, it says in 2 Chronicles 3:14, and he made the veil out of blue and purple and scarlet and linen and wove cherubim in it. So that was the second veil that's mentioned, and then we have the veil here. If we go to an article on the Mishnah where it explains, it says, the Gemara discusses the aforementioned curtain that separated the Holy of the Holies from the sanctuary. Now, this quoting the Mishnah, Rabban Shimon ben Gamaliel says, in the name of Rabbi Shimon, the son of the deputy high priest, the curtain has a thickness of a handbreadth. That is a handbreadth. It would be this way here. A span is all the way here, but it's a breadth, so that's fairly thick, 3 inches thick. And it is woven from 72 strands of yarn. And each and every strand from those 72 is made from 24 threads. The curtain was made from 4 materials: sky blue wool, purple wool, scarlet wool, and fine linen. And a strand was made up of 6 threads of each type of material. And with regard to the dimensions of the curtain, its length was 40 cubits as the height of the ceiling of the sanctuary, and its width was 20 cubits to match the width of the entrance. And it was made from 82 10,000ths, that is 820,000 golden dinar. And they used to make 2 new curtains every year. And the curtain was so heavy that they needed 300 priests to carry it when they would immerse it. This splitting of the veil couldn't have been from the earthquake, because it says, Ke igi isisti, ke e petre eskisthisan. The earth was shaken and the rocks were split. So the veil was rent from the top to the bottom, opened up to, which says in Hebrews 10:10, which he dedicated to us, a way newly made and living through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. The death and resurrection of Jesus, we go through Jesus as our veil to the Father. And now the splitting from above and below, and the earth was shaken and the rocks split. We see in 2 Samuel 22:8 where it says, And the earth was shaken and disturbed. Even the foundations of heaven were disturbed and thrown into a spasm, for the Lord was enraged with them. So this shaking, now not every earthquake that happens on the earth, which happens daily, is because of the Lord being angry. Isaiah, but this one I believe was, in Matthew we're talking about. Isaiah 13:13, it says, For the heavens shall be enraged, and the earth shall be shaken from out of its foundation, because of the rage of the anger of the Lord of hosts, in the day whichever his rage should come about. So we have this shaking of this earth, and then it calls it an earthquake later here, and the rocks were split, and ke ta benimia aneoch the son, and the tombs were open. Tombs, the word 34:19, menimia, is also used for a sepulcher and a memorial. A grave is not the same thing. A grave is down into the ground, dug into the ground. A sepulcher or a tomb is carved into rock or some sort of hard material or made up of stones. In Isaiah 26:19, it says, "And the dead shall rise up, and the ones in the sepulchres shall be raised, and the ones in the earth shall be glad, for the dew by you is a cure to them." If people saw in Isaiah the prophecy of the dead rising up, coming from the sepulchres, they would have understood that this is what was happening at the time of Jesus. Matthew 8:28, it says, "And in his coming unto the other side of the place of the Gergesenes, there encountered him 2 demon-possessed coming forth from out of the sepulchres." So these men were living basically in a cemetery. Jesus is buried in a sepulcher in Mark 28:8, and John the Immerser, the Baptist, was put in a tomb in Mark 6:29. The women and the angel were in the tomb in Mark 16:1-8 after the resurrection. I'm sorry, before the resurrection. Well, right during the time of the resurrection, I suppose. Jesus appeared then. And the tombs of the prophets were mentioned by Jesus in many places. Among them was Luke 23:55. And Lazarus was raised from the dead. That's in John 11, verses 17-44. A long story. And then in John 5:29, Jesus says, "There comes an hour, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and the ones hearing shall live." And there's more to that from 25-29 in John. Acts 13:29-30 says, "And as they finished all the things being written concerning him, lowering him from the tree," that is the cross, "they put him into a tomb. But God raised him from the dead." So he didn't stay in the tomb very long. And then it says, "Ke pola somata ton kekimenon agion igerthi," and many bodies of the holy ones sleeping arose. Sleeping is mentioned in John 11:11. It says, "And after this he says to them, Lazarus our friend has went to sleep, but I shall go that I shall wake him up." I believe that we are going to go to sleep, except the ones that will be taken alive and to meet the Lord in the air, which it mentions. But the sleep I've used so many times is like the little caterpillar walking around, and the little caterpillar attaches himself to a twig, starts weaving a little chrysalis around him, the cocoon. He's in there and he turns into goo, and then the goo turns into what opens up to this monarch, beautiful butterfly, gorgeous butterfly, takes off with his wings. Now he's able to fly, do way more than he ever was able to do as a caterpillar. We, in our sleep stage, when we waken to the Lord's waking us up, we are going to be like that caterpillar. I really believe we are going to see things, be able to do things that are miraculous. We're going to go, wow, how can we do these things? How can I do this? It's going to be an amazing thing. And sleeping is something that we will all go through, except, like I said, the one rising. People that went to sleep, it mentions, to show that this is what it is in Acts 7:60, where Stephen, it says, "And this having said, he went to sleep," after he was stoned to death. 1 Corinthians 7:39, it says, "But if a husband should sleep, she is free from whom she wants to marry." Now, sleeping isn't, he's not really sleeping. This is a figure of speech for death. Once the husband dies, then she can marry who she wants, not when the husband goes to sleep. And this, more on this is 1 Corinthians 11:30, 15:18, 1 Thessalonians 4:13 to 15. And 1 Corinthians 15:20 says, "But now Christ has been raised from the dead. He became first fruit of the ones sleeping." So he went into the tomb and came back out as in his form that he showed us after the resurrection, where he appeared to different people in different forms. 1 Corinthians 15:51, it says, "We shall not all sleep, but all shall be changed." So there it shows we're not all going to be sleeping. Some people will be changed, taken to meet the Lord in the air. In verse 53, "Ke exelthontes ek ton menimion," and having come forth from out of the tombs, metatin egrison aftu, after his rising up, Isiolthon is tin agian polin. They entered into the holy city, these dead people. Ke enaphanis thison polis, and were revealed to many. So the dead were raised up, and they walked around and appeared to the people at that time. In verse 54, it says, "O they ekatontarkos ke medavtu," now the centurion and the ones with him, tiruntes ton soon, keeping guard over Jesus, edontes ton seismon, having beheld the earthquake, and now it calls it an earthquake, seismon. We have seismic, comes from that Greek word. Keta genomena, and the things happening, ephobithison sphodra, they feared exceedingly, legontes, saying, alithos theou eos in utos, truly this was Son of God. The centurions, interesting men, military men. We see the good centurion that came to Jesus, concerned about his sick servant. That's in Luke 7, verses 2 to 6, where Jesus healed him. The centurion didn't actually come to Jesus, but he sent somebody. And then we see a centurion being mentioned in the Akeptus mosaic, which I've showed so many times, where the man who built this mosaic to God, Jesus Christ, has his name. The centurion's name is in the mosaic. And you can see that if you go to the Akeptus mosaic. It's in northern Israel, the first church. And here we have this centurion who now believes. Later we had the Cornelius, the centurion that appeared to Peter. In verse 55, Isen they aki ginekis pole apo macrothen theoruse, and there were many women viewing from far off. Etinas ikoluthison to isu apotis Galileas, who followed Jesus from Galilee, diakonuse avto, serving to him. People that loved the Lord Jesus Christ. These poor women had to view and see him being tortured and killed in a horrible, horrible way. It's so horrible thinking about these poor women, what they had to view. And hopefully Jesus appeared to these same women, and they found out that he has the power over death, and giving it to these women, so now they can rejoice. We'll have to wait to the next section to get to that part. And then in verse 56, it says, En eis in Maria I Magdalene, ke Maria I tu Iakovu, ke iosimitir, ke imitir ton ion Zebedeu. So we have Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joses, and the mother of the sons of James and John. We have 7 Marys in the New Testament. Mary, the mother of Jesus, who was at the burial or the crucifixion. Mary Magdalene, again, another one at the crucifixion. Mary of James and Joses, who might have been the wife of Cleopas, which is another Mary that's mentioned at a different place, was at the burial. Then Mary, the sister of Martha, and Lazarus, the sister of Lazarus, was another Mary. The Mary of the mother of John Mark, who had a room where the disciples met after the death of Jesus. And a Roman believer mentioned by Paul in Romans 16:6. So all these Marys and the mother of the sons of James and John is mentioned. The next section, the burial of Jesus.